Hello and welcome to episode 125 of my podcast all about knitting and crochet and my yarn shop here in Wiesbaden, Germany. I'm Kiko and today is January 10th, 2022. Today I'm wearing two older things, nothing that I just finished, but not that old, not like years ago. And the little scarf or shawl I'm wearing is the Hitchhiker by Martina Behm. I think it was the first of her patterns that got really famous and was knit by everybody, I think. And for years and years, I would explain to people how to knit the shawl, and I never knit one myself. And then I think it was either last year or 2 years ago, I decided I finally need to knit a Hitchhiker for myself. And I used this Schafpate yarn by Opal. It's their 6-ply yarn. It's the only time that they did the Schafpate yarn in 6-ply, and I really liked the color, and I decided to knit a Hitchhiker. That's a bit thicker than the pattern calls for, but I'm really happy because it's this 6-ply yarn. It's 150 grams. I'm not quite sure in the original pattern whether she just uses 100 grams. I think she uses a yarn that has like 500 meters, but I'm not too sure. But I mean, you can use any yarn you like. You can knit it as big or as little as you feel like, or as you have yarn. So I'm really happy with the size of this, and I love wearing it. And today I paired it with my example pullover, which is a pattern by Heather from HGDC, HG Designs Crochet. I test crochet the pullover when she first published the pattern, and I think she designed the pullover to go along with her workbook that teaches you how to write down your designs and how to grade your designs. And that's why she called this pattern example, because it's the example that she uses in her workbook. And I used two different yarns. The colorful one is a 6-ply colorful rainforest color by Opal, and the black is a 4-ply yarn, so a sock weight yarn, and they are held together. So that's why you can see a little more of the color and a little less of the black. But then the seams and the edges are all done just in black. And yeah, love it. It's a really nice and warm pullover. And the reason I got up is I want to show you something else. I wanted to show the whole pullover, but I also wanted to show you one of my haramakis while I wear it as a belly warmer. And I've talked in the last video that I did with my sister, we talked a lot about the haramaki, but I show one every now and then. I knit one every now and then. And I wanted to show you this one. And the lower bit is black. And then there's a bit with one black strand and one gray strand, and then there's two gray, and then there's one gray and one glitter color, and then the top of the haramaki is two strands of the blue glitter yarn held together. And this is what it looks like when I wear it as a belly warmer. And I just put it on today because I was a bit cold. I haven't shown this one before in the video, I think mainly because I didn't knit it myself. A friend of mine knitted, and I can't quite remember why. Maybe I gave her something that I had knitted that ended up too small for me, or something, I don't remember. But she wanted to knit something for me, and I had wanted a haramaki like this that's fairly neutral for a long time. I never got round to knitting it, and the knitting is fairly easy. It's just a 2x2 rib, and a black one would have been extremely neutral, but that would have been too boring. So I asked her to change the colors the way I showed you. And I get questions about where to find a pattern for a haramaki and how to knit one. And they're really simple. You just need to calculate the number of stitches you would like, and then you just knit any pattern you like and any length you like, basically. In the book that Martina Umemura wrote, there are two basic designs. So when you use sock weight yarn, she has you cast on around 160 stitches, depends on what pattern you use. And if you hold the yarn doubled, then it's around 110 stitches. So with the 2x2 rib, you can either use 108 or 112, or you can calculate your own number with your gauge swatch if that's too narrow for your hips, or if you want it narrower just as a hat and scarf or loop scarf. So it's really simple to do. I think the basic models in the books are usually about 56 centimeters long. So it's twice 28 centimeters, because lots of them are knit in two halves with either different colors or different patterns or both. With this one, it's not two halves because it has 5 different sections, but that's because I wanted the colors this way. And I think there's one in the book that has different colors that way. With the yarn held double, you can mix the colors really nicely and have this gradient effect. Yeah, that's everything I'm wearing today. On to finished objects. I have 2 FOs today, and the first one I showed as a work in progress, as a new cast on last week, and I finished it because it's such a little thing, and it's my Porg out of the Star Wars, knitting Star Wars book that I got for Christmas, and and I think he's the cutest thing. He's so soft with this alpaca yarn. I used the alpaca yarn by Hansa Farm. I attached the eyes. They're really tight now. Can't get them off even if a kid would play with it. Then finished knitting the body. I knit the wings. They're knit in the round, so they have 2 nice sides. Make sure I sewed them on securely, and then you knit the legs. Funny thing, in the book they say to knit the 4 stitches in the round. Not quite sure how you're supposed to do that, so I just knit that as an I-cord, and then you do the increases for the feet, and then you just knit the little toes. It's a bit fiddly, but it's not big, so it's quite quick to be done. In the book there's no pattern of the back of the bird, so I didn't even know it had a tail until I read tail, and I thought, oh, it has a tail. Yeah, but I love it. I think it's so funny. I'm not very good at embroidery, so this side of the mouth is a bit crooked. This side is a bit better, but then I was too lazy to fix it, and I thought it just gives it a bit more character with this slightly uneven mouth, and I really love it. So this is my Porg, my first Porg. I don't think it'll be the last one. I know I don't need all these toys, but I just love them. And if I made 3, you could practice juggling with them. And they would get to fly. So that's a really nice idea. Okay, the next finished object is also a new cast on, because I cast it on and I also finished it last week. I actually cast it on one day and finished it the next day because it's something really little, and it's this tiny little gnome. I think last week I told you about the Year of Gnomes that Sarah Shearer announced for this year, 2022. And she said that if you knit any of her 12 gnome patterns that she's published so far, you can enter to win prizes. I haven't really found out how to do the entering yet, because you have to write an email and you have to send some link or something. I've made a project page for my little gnome, so I know that's one of the requirements. You can also take part by posting on Instagram. I'll have to find out what the email address is. I'll have to find out what link to send, and then I will send it so I can take part in the drawing prizes. I think she does it quarterly, but still I want to enter for January. So this is my January gnome. I used the pattern Never Not Gnoming. It's the first gnome pattern that she published, and this is Natasha, because there are 3 different gnomes in that pattern. I had knit all 3 before, but I gave them all away, so I decided to re-knit all of them, and I will probably knit one of them per month. Maybe the next 2 months I'll do the other 2 in that pattern. Maybe I'll do something else in between and then do this pattern again at some other time. I used alpaca silk yarn by Hansa Farm, which is rather crazy to use for a gnome, but my excuse is I'm using leftovers. This is leftover yarn from some wrist warmers that I knit some time ago, and yeah, I thought this is going to be a small project. And I think basically after knitting the big gnome with the Westfalen Wolle, I was a bit tempted to knit all the gnomes out of that yarn, but then I would have had so many big gnomes that I just don't know where to put them. But a lot of people liked the natural colors in that gnome. And so I thought about using other natural colors and other natural yarn. And but then I thought I shouldn't start new balls of yarn. So let's check the leftover yarn that I have. And then I came across these colors. I have 2 or 3 more colors that I have used or reused from that yarn. And I'm pretty sure I'll be making a few more gnomes out of that yarn in different colors. So yeah, I'll show you whenever I get to them. That's all the finished objects I have for today. Then on to works in progress. And by the way, I have 4 new cast-ons last week. It's a bit crazy, but sometimes you just need to cast on all the things. And one of the new cast-ons is already done, so that's the gnome. And then I have 3 other new cast-ons and 1 finished object, so that's not perfect. But that's the way it goes, and you want to see things, so I need to cast on new things. Okay, works in progress, socks. The oldest pair of socks on my needle are the Dubai socks by Mina Phillip, the knitting expat, out of her ebook Around the World in 8 Socks. And last week I had finished half the heel. Now the whole heel is complete. Should have brought a sock blocker. I could have shown you better, but doesn't matter. And I've knit part of the foot. So yeah, maybe half the foot, probably a little less than half. So I can keep working on that. I really want to get it finished, but it does take time and concentration. It's a lot of stitches. It's a lot more than I usually knit for myself, but because of the cabling, you just need more stitches than usual. And I think once they're done, they'll be really nice and warm and pretty socks. But then I cast on more socks because I need more socks on the go. So the next pair of socks is the Zakkuri Remix socks. I test knit the pattern a few weeks ago and I really liked it. And the pattern comes with 4 different options. And I knew even when I knit the first pair that I wanted to knit the pattern again and use a different option. So this time, so this is how far I've knit. These are toe-up socks. And then with the first pair that I knit, there was one cable. One sock had it on this side, the other sock had it on the other side. And then the cable ran up the whole foot and the leg of the sock. But there's one option without a cable. Then there's the option that I knit with the one cable on the side. Then there's one option where you have no cable on the foot, but 2 cables on each side of the leg. And then there's the last option that I'm going to knit, and that's no cables on the foot of the sock, but then you have cables all around the leg. And that's the one I want to do. And to make sure that you can really see the cables very clearly, I decided to use a single color yarn, which is something I don't do very often. And the yarn I'm using is Hansa Farm sock yarn, but it's very old yarn. So it's when they were still called Fair Alpaca, and it's their old alpaca sock yarn. So these are 50-gram balls that run about 200 meters. And the new sock yarn that they came out with last year has 56 grams to the 200 meters. The content is the same, 75% alpaca and 25% nylon. And I knitted help double. So I had already used this yarn for something. I don't remember. This was a new ball of yarn. I will weigh the yarn when I'm knitting the leg to make sure that I only use half the yarn that I have, because I think I only have those 2 in that color. Yeah, but I finished the toe, started the foot. I have started the increases for the heel. There's just a few increases here. You can see these are the heel increases. That's why I have quite a few stitch markers in. Yeah, enjoy knitting this yarn. I still have quite a bit of their old sock yarn, and I want to use it up as quickly as possible because I love the new yarn, and I want to use that. But yeah, also have to get rid of the old one. So I think holding the yarn double helps me to use up the yarn more quickly. Okay, and then the next new cast on is another pair of socks, and that this time the main thing was to use the yarn. And this is the Opal Abo yarn, which is the subscription yarn. And as you probably know by now, if you've seen more of my videos, is that the subscription means you get a parcel with 6 balls of yarn, sock yarn, every 3 months or 4 times a year. And then there's the Opal Abo group on Ravelry, and there's something that's called the Musterschlacht, which translates to pattern battle, and for that one of the 6 colors is chosen, and then everybody who takes part has to knit with that color, but everybody has to use a different pattern. And when we were choosing the colors, I was paying attention because I didn't want my favorite color to end up in the pattern battle because I already had plans for that. So I voted for this color, and this color won, not because of my vote, but it's just the color that most people chose. And because it's not exactly my favorite color, but it has a lot of green in it, I decided to knit green socks so I can donate them to the ovarian cancer organization in Germany who help women with ovarian cancer. But then after the color was chosen, I completely forgot about saying which pattern I want to knit. So the next time I remembered and I checked in the group, there were already 80 people who had put down their pattern. So most people in the pattern battle knit socks. There's a few other patterns around, and I usually try not to knit socks for that, but as I said, this time I wanted to knit green socks, and I looked through the list of patterns that were already chosen, and I realized that nobody had chosen a pattern from this ebook that I'm already knitting from, Around the World in 8 Socks by Mina Philipp, and I decided to knit another pattern from that ebook because there are 8 patterns in the ebook. The Dubai socks is the 4th pattern that I'm knitting, and I decided to knit the Hong Kong socks for this with this yarn. So this is one pattern repeat. I just finished one pattern repeat, and I really like this little lace pattern. There's also a little knit purl pattern in between. That's not so obvious if you look at it from afar, so I wasn't really aware of that when I started knitting, but it just adds a bit more structure to the pattern. I really like it. The yarn's quite interesting. I think it's a nice light yarn, so even though it's colorful, it doesn't completely eat up the pattern. It's still quite visible. Yeah, so I'm knitting this as part of the pattern battle, and the goal is to donate these socks as a pair of green socks. That's all the socks I have on the needle at the moment. The next project I want to show you are the wrist warmers that I knit from one of Romi's patterns. These are her Thanksgiving mitts. Showed you the first one last week, and I had just cast on the second, and now I have finished, just cut off the contrast colors. So I finished the lower bit of the pattern, and as the blue yarn, I never pay attention to starting at the same point. So there's a bit there's a difference in where I am in the colorway. So there's more red down here, and also there's more red down here, and with this one there's more red up here. So I thought that was not perfect, that the red ended up being in the same row as the pink, so the pattern gets a little lost there. That's a bit nicer on this one, even though there is a little bit of red, but it's not quite as much as on this one. And I was quite happy to see the red down here because this is just one color down here. And yeah, now I have to start the thumb increases, and then at some point I'll do the other color work, and I will try and finish those soon. I would like to show them as a finished object next week so I can give them away the weekend after that. I should be able to do that. Question is what else I get knit in the same week, but we'll see. So that's that. Then I continued knitting on the, at the moment, black cardigan that will get the neon colors in the front. Once I finish the cardigan itself, it's the Rainbow Cardi by Stephanie Lotven. And I think I have finished the yoke. I tried it on yesterday. I decided it's big enough. So the next row, I will be splitting front and back from the sleeves, and then it should look more like a cardigan. And I hope the knitting will go a bit quicker then, because then I will, with the front and back, I will just go down straight. With the sleeves, I will have to do the decreases, so I have to pay a little attention. But then they don't have that many stitches and the stitch count decreases, so that always feels like the knitting goes faster, I think. So what I usually do is I finish my first ball of yarn with the front and back, and then when I start the second skein, I will do the sleeves first and then finish the front and back, so I don't have too much hanging off my needles while I knit the sleeves. But this is still quite a bit of yarn, so I think I can knit a fair bit of front and back before I do the sleeves. So that's that. And then the other sort of sweater project I am knitting is the Raglano that I'm knitting out of this Rainforest color by Opal. It's the 6-ply. I'm not sure if it's, yeah, well, it says 6-ply, so I don't know whether the DK weight is 6-ply or 8-ply. So I'll stick with the 6 and 8 and 4-ply with that names. And I'm still on the yoke as well, but I am getting close to the end of the yoke. So if I wanted a sort of slim fit, I could probably stop knitting the yoke, but I want it a bit wider. I wanted a casual, a bit oversized pullover. So I've decided to add a few more rows. I have just, so I always need to increase 4 stitches to be back in the rip pattern. And I've done 2 of those increases. I need to do another 2 to be back in pattern. And then I will decide whether I do 4 more increases or not. So that's the way I've been working for the last few rounds, that I always do 4 increases and then measure and try on and then do the next 4 and so on and so forth. So I hope to finish this yoke soon as well. There's still, quite some yarn in this ball as well. That's 150 grams, so there should be quite a bit left. We'll see how that goes on. So that's that pullover. And then to the last new cast on for this week. And sometimes when I cast on things, I just want to do something specific. Sometimes with the pattern battle, I wanted to knit the yarn. With the Zakkuri socks, I both wanted to knit the pattern and I wanted to use up the yarn. So that was 2 good reasons to cast on. And with this new cast on, there were also several things coming together. One of them was that I wanted to use the Westfalen Wolle. It's that natural yarn, over there, that I use for that gnome. And I wanted to knit more out of that yarn. And I also wanted to use it for color work, because I think it's a really good yarn for color work. And then also I'm in such a gnome fever. I want to knit all the things gnome, and Sarah Shearer designed a pullover that has gnomes knit into the yoke, and I was thinking of doing that, but they are knit with blue and red, and the Westfalen Wolle is undyed yarn. So I was thinking I could use the light grey as the main color and then use the dark grey for the bodies of the gnomes, but then I wasn't sure what to do for the hats. And then I thought, I could use sock yarn for the contrast colors, and if I hold it double, it should work out. If I use one strand of the Westfalen Wolle and 2 strands of sock yarn, it might work. But if I do something like that, which is a new combination, which is sort of an experiment, you need to swatch. And I'm not a big fan of swatches like most people. I do them because I know they're important if you want your garment to fit. But I sometimes don't like to just knit the swatch and not do anything with it. So one thing that I like to do out of swatches is wrist warmers. If you knit like 10... No, if you knit 20 centimeters, you have a nice big swatch, you can really measure things out, and then you can sew them together and you have a wrist warmer. You just need to knit another one. That's the drawback there. But then the other thing you can knit, especially for color work, because you're supposed to do the swatch in the round if you do color work. So a great thing to knit as a swatch is a hat. So if you knit a hat, you can do your color work in the round, and then you can use that to measure out how many stitches you have for 10 centimeters. You can see whether the yarns work together. So that's a good idea. So I sat down and I looked at different colors by Opal to do for these gnomes. And I pulled out balls of yarn out of my shelves and combined colors. And then I thought, if I do a little hat for a swatch, I only need a little contrast color. So it's not very clever to start a new whole ball, especially as I have bags full of leftovers. So that's what I ended up doing. I decided this was going to be the main color. I used those 2 colors for the bodies of the gnomes. These are leftover yarns from, I think these are from socks. I think that's also from socks. And then I picked up those 2 colors for the hat. So this is a pair of socks that I knit as a test knit, and they are a present. I am going to give them to my aunt, but they are a late Christmas present. And this I used for socks. I combined that color with another color, and I did a pair of socks with different stripes. So the one sock had 4 round stripes, this color and the other, and then the other sock I did the helix knitting where you switch every round. So I thought that would be nice red hats, these would be nice blue bodies, and this is what I have knit so far. I think it looks so funny, and I think the yarn weight is quite okay. To me, while knitting, it always feels a bit like the sock yarn, even held double, is a bit thinner than the Westfalen Wolle. But when you look at it, I think it looks okay. Now, the problem I had is that the hat pattern that I bought from Sarah Shearer uses fingering weight yarn. So I had to come up with a new number of stitches, and I had knit a hat out of Westfalen Wolle before, and that ended up a bit too big. Unfortunately, I didn't write down how many stitches I cast on, and as I sold the hat, I can't count them anymore, but I thought it was about 84 stitches, so I decided to use less stitches for this hat. So I looked at the baby hat, but that had too many stitches, and I looked at the charts, and I just did one chart fewer than the baby size. Which sounds really strange. But this is why I only have 6 gnomes on my hat. But as you can see, it's a little hat. It's not a baby hat. I think it could be a kid's hat. I'm visiting a friend today, and I will try and get her daughter to try the hat on so I can see whether that would fit her. But it's definitely too small for me. But in the chart, every chart repeat is 2 gnomes. So if I wanted to make that hat to fit me, I think 2 more gnomes would be too big. So I think if I could add 1 more gnome, I think that's possible. If you sort of cut the chart in 2, you can add 1 more gnome, and that might be the right size for me. But the good thing is I could check how the yarns work together. I could use this as a swatch to count the stitches and to measure how many stitches I wanted for a pullover for myself. And I really like the way the colors come out. So you cast on with the red color, then you knit the brim, and then you knit the gnomes. So here you can see there's some light bits from this yarn, and then there's also some dark bits in this yarn. You can see those here. So the hats are a lot darker on this side, but I think that's okay. I don't think the gnomes have to be a single color, and I think once the hat is finished, it should be quite obvious that these are gnomes on the hat. I'm a little worried that the hat might be too high compared to how wide it is, but that's okay. That's okay. I'm pretty confident some kid will want to wear the hat with the gnomes on it. But we'll see. We'll see when it's finished what it looks like and if it's wearable or not. Yeah, that brings me to the memories blanket. I have added a few more squares again. Let me see. Yeah, this is the side that I started knitting. So last time I had finished this edge. So I started on the other side of the square, and the first square I put in is this glitter yarn by Opal, and it sort of complements those two yarns. These are all three glittery yarns by Opal, and I use those for 2 pairs of stockings, so knee-high socks, and I knit them with the yarn held doubled, and one pair had those 2 colors and the other pair had this dark color and this color. So the dark color was what sort of brought the 2 pairs together. They were for 2 sisters, and I knit the heels and toes with this yarn held double. Then the legs and feet were knit, no, the cuffs were knit with the colorful yarn held double in itself, and then the leg and the foot were knit with the colorful and the dark held double. So there should be pictures on my Ravelry page if you're interested. But yeah, so I wanted those 3 yarns to be together, but instead of knitting them straight away, I started this row with this, then started this row with that, and then now I've finished all 3 yarns and they are together in the blanket. And the next 2 squares that I knit, these are the colors of a pair of socks that I knit last year when I joined the Sock Madness. Last year I took part in the Sock Madness for the very first time, and one of the warm-up patterns was a colorwork sock, and I used those 2 colors to knit those warm-up socks. It's the only pair of warm-up socks that I knit last year because I had missed the first pattern. I got it later, but I never got around to using it. And then the third warm-up pattern came out really close to when the competition was going to start, so I didn't knit them then, and I haven't knit them so far. Maybe someday. It's a really nice pattern. Yeah, so these are the 3 squares that I knit last week, and I hope to add more squares this week. And that brings us to the 2 knit-alongs. Not a lot has happened there. I knit only a little bit on the Wolkig cowl by Martina Behm. I still love it, and it's a bit weird with this project. I really enjoy knitting on it, but I do have to pay attention, and in a strange way, I don't really want the knitting to be over. Not that there's the danger of it being over, because there's still lots of yarn left. But I really want to sort of draw out the knitting because it's such a nice experience, and I want to really work on that in special moments, if you understand what I mean. But I will see that I do a bit of work every now and then so that it does grow, and at some point it will have to get finished. And the other knit along is the Rio Calina KAL by Cat Bawdy. And there I have to apologize because there's a mistake in the tutorial video. In the video I say that you cast on 64 stitches, that's okay, and you can change the number by adding or subtracting 4 stitches step by step, so you can add 4 or you can add 8 and so forth. But I said the strips should be 110 centimeters long, and that's wrong. I must have mixed up the number when I calculate it from inches to centimeters because it's supposed to be 34 inches long, and that's about 86 centimeters. And I must have, for some reason, typed in 44 inches, and that would be 110 centimeters. So I really apologize. And if you have knit 110 centimeters already, you don't have to undo it. You can just sew it together a little differently. I will explain that in the next tutorial, but I'm really sorry that I mixed it up, and there's no way I can change the video now. So if we change the video itself, we would have to do a whole new video. So instead we just put in the description box, I put it down that I messed up the numbers and that it's supposed to be 86 centimeters, or if you work with inches, it's 34 inches. But if you're English speaking, chances are that you checked out the pattern yourself. I think it's more of a problem in my German channel because a lot of people don't like to read English instructions, so they go by what I say in the video, and that's a problem. But anyway, I finished the first ball of yarn, started the second one, but didn't do a lot after that. Because it's only 86 centimeters, I realized that I only need 3 balls of yarn because it's a bit thinner than the one that's mentioned in the pattern. So the whole thing is a bit narrower, a bit thinner. So this will only be 150 grams and not 200 grams. And I am thinking of doing fewer cables with the second ball of yarn and then again more cables with the third, because the way you wear it, the first third of your cowl will show in the front, the way she wears it, and then the second will be in the back, and then the third will be in the front again. And that's what I meant. If you knit your strip too long, what you can do is you can sort of put it like this, and then you can come round and you can just seam a longer seam, and then it should still work. And then so one half will be down here, and then the other half will be up here, and then it will fold over, and that's how you can see both sides of the pattern of the cowl. Yeah, but we'll come to that once I get there. With this, I have to get a move on, I think, because people have already asked for the next tutorial, but I need to finish this strip before I can film that. So this will have to get a bit of priority this week. Yeah, that's it. That's everything I knit last week. Again, no crochet project, but at least I showed you a crochet jumper today. I will find a crochet project at some point, so don't worry. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!